The missing persons report was filed on August 19, 2003, and at first glance, it seemed as straightforward as hundreds of others. Ethan Carter, 28, a former Marine, was traveling with his girlfriend Lily Monroe, 26, a freelance photographer. They were driving a silver SUV, rented from Los Angeles, bearing temporary California plates. Their 2-week journey began at Venice Beach and was set to end in Phoenix after crossing the Mojave Desert. The last time they were seen was at a small gas station near Ludlow at 6:47 p.m., where Lily made a phone call home, saying they were about to camp overnight in an area she called Shadow Rock Wash. For nearly 6 years, their disappearance sat in a thin, dusty file in the San Bernardino County Records Room, while their families clung to alternating waves of hope and despair. Then, in July 2009, Isabel Duarte, a hiker from Oregon, exploring the Mojave Desert with friends, veered off the trail to find a unique photo angle. What she discovered, impaled in the towering chala cactus, pierced by spines like glass spears, was a partially decomposed human remains. Just 6 feet below the rocky sandy surface, that body had lain undisturbed for nearly 6 years, unnoticed, without a single trace. And that body would completely change what the police thought they knew about the mysterious disappearance of Ethan Carter and Lily Monroe. But before we dive into the shocking discovery that reignited this cold case, we need to understand who they were and why their disappearance baffled everyone who knew them. Ethan Carter was not the kind of person who simply vanished. Among fellow veterans, he was known for his meticulous attention to detail, living and acting as if every day was a survival mission. He had served 2 tours in Iraq, surviving brutal campaigns, and upon returning, chose a quiet life, traveling with the woman he loved, Lily. Lily Monroe was the embodiment of freedom and creative passion. With a camera always around her neck, she captured ruins, crumbling walls, and the last light of day on scorched earth. They were different but perfectly complementary. Above all, they trusted each other completely. That Mojave trip was their dream, their first vacation without work schedules or life's pressures. But what made it special wasn't the trip itself. It was how they lived every moment of it. Ethan checked the vehicle each morning like a military ritual. Lily chose the music, noted scenic views, and called home at 8 p.m. sharp. Whether by a campfire under the stars or amid the hum of desert insects, that call always happened, connecting their journey to the outside world, until August 11, 2003. That morning started like any other. Ethan filled the gas tank, checked every tire, every strap on the luggage, every scratch on the spare water jug. Lily's camera captured the final image, a blurry photo of Ethan smiling, tilting his head against a fiery sunset, with a jagged rock horizon behind him. They left the gas station at 7:13 p.m., planning to camp overnight near Shadow Rock Wash. Everything was on schedule. Everything was as planned. Everything was like dozens of trips before. But what happened next would defy every logical assumption and mark the start of one of the most haunting missing persons cases in Mojave Desert history. What made their disappearance so perplexing was this. Their rented SUV was equipped with the latest GPS tracking system of the time, directly linked to the rental company's satellite positioning service. This wasn't just any GPS. It was an upgraded version used for homeland security, updating its location every 30 minutes to a central server. As Ethan drove southeast through the desert, the signal was consistent. 7:45 p.m., still en route. 8:15 p.m., moving steadily. But at 8:47 p.m., near the rocky hills of Shadow Ridge, everything stopped. The GPS didn't fade. It simply vanished. No data, no disruption, as if the entire system had been removed or destroyed instantly. Engineers from the rental company insisted this was impossible without physical interference. But that was only the beginning of the 6-year nightmare that followed. And the most chilling part wasn't the GPS vanishing. It was the dawning realization among those left behind. This couple may never have left the desert, and someone had intentionally ensured they disappeared forever. Before diving deeper into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated on the latest stories. Ethan Carter was born in 1975 in Lincoln, Nebraska, in a family where loyalty to country was a generational legacy. His grandfather fought in World War II, his father was a Vietnam War veteran, and Ethan, as expected, joined the Marines at 18. He was deployed to Fallujah during its bloodiest period, wounded by shrapnel while saving a trapped comrade under fire. Returning after 2 tours with an honor medal, Ethan carried a sun-weathered body, a quiet voice, and eyes that silently scanned every corner of a room, as if still on a battlefield. In 2001, he left the military and settled in Flagstaff, Arizona, a peaceful mountain city of pine and snow, to start anew. There, he worked as a survival guide for hiking groups, teaching how to read topographic maps, retain heat with bark, and distinguish wolf tracks from dog prints. He lived simply, alone, but not withdrawn. Friends described Ethan as a man of few words but many actions, someone who'd drive 50 miles at night to take you to a hospital if you asked. Lily Monroe was his opposite. Born on the other side of the map in Portland, Oregon, where rain fell like fine threads and old bookstores crowded beside coffee shops, she was the only child of an illustrator and a glassblower. Raised in a loft filled with light and the smell of oil paint, Lily studied photography at a small art school, but rarely followed convention. Instead of portraits or fashion, she spent her youth chasing what others left behind: rotting barns, broken billboards, utility poles scrawled with handwritten notes. Those places, she wrote in her journal, are like emotional relics of an America that doesn't want to remember who it was. She first came to Arizona in 2002 to photograph ghost towns on the edge of the Mojave. That's where she met Ethan, at a weekend survival course for those lost between GPS and instinct. Lily arrived late, wearing Converse and carrying a Leica camera. Ethan quietly watched her slip on the sand, then offered his hand without a word. Their love began like that, not dramatic, not romanticized, but as simple as a nod between two people from worlds that seemed to have no intersection. A year later, they rented a small wooden house outside Flagstaff, living together like two rough puzzle pieces that fit oddly well. Ethan cooked, fixed cars, drew maps. Lily blogged, developed film in a darkroom, planned trips. They didn't have much money, but had endless reasons to drive the unnamed roads of America, and the Mojave was their next destination. That journey, friends said, wasn't just a trip but a ritual. Ethan wanted to test a new route for his fall survival classes. Lily wanted to complete her photo series, Cities That Forgot. They planned for 2 months, renting a 4-wheel drive SUV from a reputable company, equipped with next-gen GPS, satellite radio, hand-annotated paper maps, and enough water for 12 days. Lily brought 3 cameras, 5 rolls of film, and a suede notebook to record the feel of the land when no one's there. Every night, Lily called her mother in Portland, a short but steady call, like a heartbeat, to say they were okay. Ethan disliked phones, but always turned on the radio to check signals before sleep. On the evening of August 11, 2003, they stopped to refuel at a small station near Ludlow. The night shift clerk, an older woman named Charlene, recalled the young woman with lightly curled red hair smiling brightly when asking about Shadow Rock Wash. "That place is remote, no signal," Charlene said. "Be careful, no one's camped there in years." Lily just smiled and said, "That's perfect. That was the last time anyone saw them." Lily's final call home was at 8:02 p.m. Then, 6 years of silence. No images, no signals, no reasons. And then, a bloodied hand, protruding from a dried chala cactus, broke that silence. But it only told half the story. The rest about Ethan, about what really happened in the desert that night, remained buried in the sand, or hidden so well that even the desert dared not speak. But before returning to the body impaled in the Mojave cactus, we need to step back to the night of August 11, 2003, and the 14 hours that followed, when everything began to fracture from what was considered normal. According to the 2009 San Bernardino County Sheriff's investigation file, the black Jeep Cherokee SUV that Ethan and Lily rented from Flagstaff left the Ludlow gas station at 8:36 p.m. Security footage captured the vehicle turning onto Route 66, its red taillights glowing through a thin layer of dust before vanishing into the night. The clerk said Lily waved through the window, while Ethan gave a slight nod. "He didn't seem like someone chasing scenic views," she said. "He seemed like someone calculating wind and distance." The vehicle's GPS system functioned steadily for over 3 hours afterward. Every 20 minutes, coordinate data was sent to the rental company's data center in Flagstaff. 9:01 p.m., coordinates matched the route to Shadow Rock Wash. 9:22, still moving, heading southwest. 9:43, stopped for 3 minutes, then continued. Maybe they paused to stargaze, or for Lily to snap a photo. 10:06, GPS showed the vehicle turning onto an unnamed dirt trail, an old red dirt path, not on commercial maps, marked only by locals or campers. And then, 10:31 p.m., the final signal. Nothing unusual marked that moment. No crash indicators, no engine alerts, no emergency requests. The GPS simply stopped transmitting. The rental company received no reports, no further data. To the server, that black Jeep had vanished from the earth after turning onto that nameless dirt road, and for the loved ones awaiting a call or text, that's when the darkness truly began. The next morning, at 6:47 a.m., Lily's mother called back after realizing her daughter hadn't checked in as usual. The call didn't connect, she left a voicemail. An hour later, she tried again. Still no response. By 10:12 a.m., she called Ethan's personal number, listed in the rental paperwork. The number you have dialed is not in service. Panic set in. By 3 p.m., she contacted Flagstaff police. They advised waiting 24 hours to file a missing persons report. But Lily's mother knew, she knew her daughter would never miss a call, especially from the wilderness. It wasn't just responsibility, it was a habit born of trust. That evening, the Jeep was flagged as inactive in the rental company's system, but it wasn't until the morning of August 13th, nearly 36 hours after the last signal, that police officially accepted the missing persons report and began tracing the final GPS coordinates. They pinpointed the area where the vehicle vanished at the intersection of 3 unmapped trails, near the northern edge of a region called Blind Coyote Mesa, a rugged, barely surveyed expanse with spotty satellite signals. A search team was deployed immediately, including a drone and 2 ground crews, but accessing the area was grueling. Daytime temperatures exceeded 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds whipped sand so fiercely that paper maps couldn't be opened. Small whirlwinds appeared in spots, like the desert warning humans to stay away. They found a turn-off faint tire tracks in the sand. Maybe the Jeep's, maybe not. But when followed, the tracks abruptly vanished after a small rise, as if the wind had deliberately erased the story's end. Strangely, they found no debris, no discarded water bottles, no sleeping bags, no maps, no cameras, no signs that Ethan and Lily had stopped, rested, or been attacked. They just vanished. The initial investigation couldn't determine a cause, no evidence of a crash, no indication they'd strayed from their route, and though police theorized they might have gotten lost or had vehicle trouble, the absence of the vehicle, or any trace of it, was inexplicable. A 2-ton SUV doesn't just disappear in the sand. One more detail made the case stranger. The Polaroid camera Lily carried, a large distinctive model, surfaced on eBay nearly 2 years later, listed by an anonymous account in Yuma, Arizona. The account was deactivated shortly after being traced. The buyer confirmed the camera still had unexposed film, but any photos had been removed. They thought it was vintage gear from an antique shop. Police couldn't verify the seller, and the camera, though seized by the FBI, bore no clear fingerprints. From then on, Ethan and Lily's disappearance was labeled insufficient data, a polite way of saying, we don't know what happened. But everything that followed, a body found in a cactus, a decayed handwritten note under a rock, and strange bones in a cave with no entry, emerged as if the Mojave, after years of silence, had decided to speak. And that's when the story stopped being about a missing vehicle or a final signal. It became about those who knew that signal was cut by human hands. But the hands left behind, those of the loved ones, wouldn't let go so easily. Lily's mother, Margaret Monroe, refused to accept missing without a trace. From the moment the phone rang unanswered, she knew something was wrong. And when police began using cold terms like suspended search, she knew she couldn't sit still. In the early years, Margaret kept a ritual of writing a letter to Lily every Sunday night, though she had nowhere to send them. She addressed them to somewhere in the Mojave Desert, where the wind keeps secrets. The letters were stored in an oak box on her desk, and once a year, she took them to the desert's edge, burning each one in silence. As for Ethan's family, silence was their chosen shield against the pain. His father, Howard Carter, a weathered veteran with gray eyes and hands that trembled slightly when pouring coffee, spoke only one sentence at the first press conference. If Ethan is alive, he'd find a way back. If he hasn't come back, someone didn't give him the chance. After that, he withdrew from the media, refused interviews, and spent the following years studying old Mojave maps. He marked over 200 locations in red, places he believed could hide a vehicle or a body. He taught himself to use GPS, bought a used drone off Craigslist, and every spring drove alone from Lincoln to California, camping near the desert, tracing trails he thought his son might have taken. He never called it a search, he said. I'm just walking along memories. They didn't speak, Margaret and Howard, not out of unwillingness, but because each grieved differently. One turned sorrow into whispers, the other into quiet action, but both refused to accept that their children were simply swallowed by the desert. In 2005, Margaret Monroe began rallying an online community. She created a website, stilloutthere.org, sharing photos, technical details, and excerpts from Lily's personal journals that she felt were important for people to know her beyond a face on a flyer. She opened a discussion forum, calling on local explorers, off-roaders, and adventure enthusiasts to share information or images from lesser-known Mojave areas. In the first year, only 6 people visited the site weekly. By 2008, it was over 30,000 monthly visits. Strangers who'd never known Lily or Ethan began calling them the Mojave couple, a symbol of all those who vanished in the blank spaces of America's maps. Some posts emerged, claiming sightings of a red-haired woman like Lily at a remote gas station near Barstow in 2004. Another claimed to have seen a man with a wing tattoo on his wrist, like Ethan, at a border checkpoint in Tecate, Mexico, but couldn't recall the exact time. Every lead was meticulously recorded and cross-checked by Margaret and Howard, though most led to dead ends. Once, they traveled together to an abandoned car lot in Salton Sea, following an anonymous tip about a black Jeep covered under industrial tarp. There was nothing, just a rusted Oldsmobile and desert rats scurrying about, but they kept going. Out of faith, or because they couldn't stop and live normally again, no one truly knew. All that was certain was that for over 6 years, neither Margaret nor Howard took their eyes off any clue. They might have disagreed on methods, but they shared one thing: neither would let the truth be buried under the sand. In March 2009, Margaret received an email from a stranger named Roscoe Briggs, an amateur photographer from Minnesota. Roscoe was traveling through the Mojave in an RV with his wife. While stopping near the Old Woman Mountains to shoot a sunset, he noticed a dead cholla cactus lying tilted on the sand. Oddly, inside its hollow, dried core, something glinted among the decayed spines. At first, I thought it was an aluminum can, Roscoe wrote, but then I saw it was human skin. The photo attached to the email showed a sun-weathered purplish hand trapped in a crack of the cactus's core, as if its owner had tried to crawl out and failed. The nails were long, cracked, and caked with what looked like long-dried blood. In the sunset's light, the hand didn't look like an abandoned corpse, but like someone still trying to call for help. And that was when every door locked for 6 years swung wide open. But what was found next, inside the cactus, under the ground and deep in the rock, would make even the worst horrors Margaret or Howard had imagined seem far too gentle. Because when the forensic team excavated the dead cholla cactus on the morning of March 16, 2009, they didn't just find a hand trapped in the rotted wood, they uncovered the entire upper half of a shriveled body, tightly wrapped in decayed gray synthetic fabric. The only part exposed was the hand. The only part that had clung to the outside world in its final moments. Dental records confirmed it unmistakably. It was Ethan Carter. What baffled them most was how the body was neatly encased inside the cactus, as if deliberately placed. The dead, hollow cholla had a diameter of about 18 inches at its center. In natural conditions, no one could have crawled inside. There were no drag marks, no ropes, no stakes or tools of force around the area. Just old animal tracks, windswept sand, and the desert's silence. But what haunted the investigators most wasn't Ethan's body. It was a small, tightly rolled piece of paper found among the blood-soaked layers of his clothing. The note, only the length of a hand, bore scrawled, sweat-stained writing, nearly torn in half. 7 words. I saw it. They buried her below. The words seemed rushed, as if written in pain or desperation to say something before it was too late. Immediately, the area around the cactus was expanded into a full crime scene. The FBI was called in within 12 hours. Forensic archaeologists, soil analysts, and arid terrain crime investigators began digging into the hard, cracked desert floor. The first hours yielded nothing but rocks, dead roots, and animal bones. But by noon on the 3rd day, a metal detector pinged under nearly 3 feet of earth. And when they dug down, The first thing to emerge was a piece of a pale purple backpack strap. Lily's favorite color. After clearing the dry soil and rock fragments, they found the second body, lying on its side, curled, head pressed to chest. No clear signs of violence, no bullet wounds, no knife marks. But the rib cage and neck bones were completely fractured. Lily Monroe had died in a fetal position, as if hugging herself. Beside the body was the Polaroid camera the FBI had seized in 2007, now confirmed to have been a decoy. The one found in the sand was the real one. The film inside was intact, and when digitally processed, it revealed final photos taken at an unmapped location. The background showed tall, terraced rock formations, curved like arches, characteristic of the Devil's Throat crater, a massive basin 11 miles south of the discovery site. In one photo, Ethan and Lily stood together, but something odd loomed behind them, a man in the distance, wearing desert camouflage, his face obscured by sunglasses and a scarf. When zoomed in, he was staring directly at the camera. From there, questions flooded like a dam breaking. Who killed them? Why was Ethan stuffed into a cactus, as if to ensure his body would never be found? Why was Lily buried so crudely with no trace of a weapon? And who was the man in the photo? While the FBI analyzed evidence, fabric, soil, bone fractures, Howard Carter, Ethan's father, remained eerily silent. But 2 weeks later, he appeared at the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Station, demanding to see the lead agent. In his hand was an old yellowed envelope, sealed with silver duct tape. He said only, "I think it's time." Inside was a copy of a journal entry Ethan had mailed to his father shortly before the couple left Flagstaff. In it, Ethan described a man they met at an abandoned fuel station near Ludlow, a self-proclaimed veteran living off the grid who knew things the government didn't want anyone to know. Lily found him unsettling. Ethan was curious. They listened as he spoke of an old Cold War bunker system, forgotten in the desert, once housing tons of military equipment and documents. The man said, "If you dare go, I'll show you the way. But don't bring anyone else." Ethan added a note. "If this is what he says, it could be the biggest discovery of my life." But Lily's worried. She says the desert isn't the place to uncover things the government buried. She says some things should stay untouched. No one knows if they found that place. But clearly, they stumbled onto something they shouldn't have. And the crack in the 6-year silence, starting with the hand in the cactus, the scrawled note about someone buried below, was proof that what they uncovered cost them their lives. But the silence wasn't over, because the only place that could house those ancient bunkers lay within a no-fly zone and privately owned land under old military control. And there, no one was allowed to enter. No one, except the one who led them there. And if he's still alive, he's out there, amid 120 degrees Fahrenheit heat, under rocks stacked for millions of years, where even the best satellite maps can't scan. But this time, the silence has been broken, and some aren't willing to let a killer hide in the sand any longer. A month after both bodies were found and identified, FBI agent Nora Tisdale was assigned to Barstow to take over the Lily Monroe and Ethan Carter case file. She'd helped dismantle a cross-state human trafficking ring in Nevada in 2006, and was known for not believing in coincidences. "If something makes a couple vanish in the desert, it's not fate," she said at the first team briefing. "It's a hand, and hands always leave marks." Tisdale started by reviewing all initial 2003 reports, files once deemed missing without a trace. This time, she looked for overlooked details, contradictory statements, blurred images, mismatched timelines. One detail stood out from the testimony of a former gas station worker, Lucas Hayden, who recalled seeing Lily and Ethan stop at an unmarked lot behind an abandoned warehouse near Route 66. When pressed, Hayden remembered they spoke with a man salt and pepper hair, wearing tactical gear, smoking a pipe, a rarity in the area. Tisdale dug into old pre-Google Earth topographic maps and confirmed the warehouse Hayden mentioned once belonged to a defunct transport company, Agrifield Logistics, bankrupt in 1987. Its last owner was Vernon Clay, a former military radar technician who worked on desert survival training programs. Clay's trail vanished from public records in 1992. She searched San Bernardino County land records and found a chilling detail, part of the buffer zone for restricted airspace 6. The area Ethan noted in his journal, was purchased in 1995 under a shell company, Seraphim Solutions. The signer, Vernon Clay. Immediately, an FBI scout team was deployed near the land. But no one, not even federal agents, could enter the restricted military zone without special clearance. They could only observe from the edge, using thermal binoculars and small drones. What they saw, though the area seemed abandoned, there were signs of activity. A metal door built into a rock face, nearly invisible, unless viewed from the right angle. A mobile antenna, mounted on a dead tree, and a tire track, very recent, leading from the desert to a smooth rock wall. Tisdale ordered further analysis, and imaging revealed a passageway behind the metal door leading underground. This wasn't on any military infrastructure maps. If this isn't a Cold War bunker, a retired military engineer consulted, said, it's something older, or something never documented. Meanwhile, another discovery came from Howard Carter. After the FBI showed him the final Polaroid photos from Lily's camera, he recalled a small detail. The scarf around the distant man's neck had a striped pattern unique to military survival units from the mid-80s training. Only one person in Barstow had attended that course. Vernon Clay. Tisdale persuaded the Department of Defense to grant a 48-hour special permit for the team to enter the restricted zone. On May 12, 2009, under the tense gazes of the team and the desert's absolute silence, they broke the lock on the steel door leading underground. A spiral iron staircase descended into darkness. The air smelled damp, moldy, and rusted. No light, no sound, but when they switched on flashlights, the first thing they saw was dust on the steps. Disturbed. Someone had been there recently. At the bottom they found a control room-like area, an old console, a hand-carved Mojave map on the wall, and an 8-track recorder with an intact tape. On the desk was a notebook labeled, Log, March 2003, Mart 2009. Inside, dozens of pages detailed entries and exits, code names of visitors, and meticulous behavioral notes. The final entry, written just 2 weeks before Ethan and Lily vanished, S-24 and F-24 approached. F expressed concern. S was agitated. Continue monitoring. Who was S? Who was F? And who was watching them? When Nora Tisdale emerged from the tunnel, she said nothing for a long stretch. Only when she saw the desert's twilight did she whisper, they weren't just killed, they were watched. And the watcher has done this before, maybe many times. And in the vast Mojave, she began tracing old tracks, marks no one wanted to see, but could no longer ignore. Because Ethan and Lily were just the surface of something quieter and far more terrifying. In the desert's heart, time and wind erased many traces, but some things, if you know where to look, emerge like bones under sand. And Agent Nora Tisdale began that work by revisiting a place few remembered, old missing persons reports from the 1980s to early 2000s, centered around the Route 66 corridor, east of the Mojave. Most cases were closed as voluntary departure or undetermined accident, especially when victims were drifters, freelance photographers, or off-grid researchers. But Tisdale noticed a chilling pattern. All occurred within 20 miles of the land Vernon Clay purchased. All involved people carrying cameras, camcorders, or recording devices. And all vanished without a final call. One file chilled Tisdale. UCLA students, Jason Rowe and Merrill Vance, missing in May 1991 during a self-organized geological survey. Their last postcard, sent from a small Ludlow gas station, read, "We're about to explore an unmapped site. If we don't return, know we saw something great." The case was closed after 18 months, with no further evidence. Tisdale tracked down the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Evidence Archive. There she found a forgotten box labeled 1991-435X. Inside were items from a burned Jeep Grand Wagoneer, found in the desert near Crater Hills, less than 15 miles from Clay's bunker. A lighter engraved with Merrill Vitt, a torn notebook cover, and an unprocessed film roll. The film, restored in an FBI lab, yielded 7 photos, most charred or blurred by heat. But the final, half-surviving image stopped the team cold. The lower half of an older man's face, gray hair, wearing aviator glasses, standing by a half-open metal door with a rock wall behind. A flashlight beam from inside illuminated the shadow of another figure, small, curled on a cold concrete floor. Tisdale knew she wasn't alone anymore. Vernon Clay had been linked to at least 2 disappearances, spanning nearly 12 years. And now, a bigger question loomed, How many people had passed through that steel door and never returned? To find answers, she returned to the logbook found in the underground control room. Each coded entry marked a visitor, perhaps one who never left. But who wrote those entries? Who kept that notebook for 6 years? And why did it stop at the final line about Ethan and Lily? Analyzing the handwriting, pen strokes, and sentence structure, FBI linguistic experts identified 3 distinct writers: a primary scribe, one who occasionally added marginal notes, and a third who wrote sparingly, always in red ink. The red ink entries were cryptic abbreviations: CD completed, PD eliminated, say non-compliant. One entry sent chills through the team August 4, 2006. S19 inquired about exit, suggested for Level 2 access. PD disagreed. 2 days later, silence. Red note. S19 case closed. Sent to archive. Was S19 a real person? Who was PD? And what did sent to archive mean? No one knew. But one thing was clear: there was a system, there was order, and there was direction. Tisdale had her team comb through records of psychiatric hospitals, veterans, and personnel from military survival programs within a 100-mile radius. One name surfaced repeatedly: as a supervisor, trainer, and later a freelance consultant for post-war psychological recovery programs. Vernon Clay. The deeper Tisdale dug, the more she felt she wasn't just investigating a murder, it was an underground world, built, hidden, and operated like an off-the-books laboratory. Each missing name was a carefully stashed specimen. Each journal, each charred photo, was a silenced voice. And then a new question emerged. If Clay had done this for decades unnoticed, who was he doing it for? And if he was no longer alive, who was continuing to write those red ink entries? Nora Tisdale didn't sleep for 2 nights. The questions pounded in her head like metal on cold steel. Who was PD? What did sent to archive mean? And who had turned the desert bunker into a maze of records, experiments, and the disposal of living people as if they were assets to be processed? On the morning of the 3rd day, as Tisdale prepared to leave the FBI's Barstow office, an internal message arrived. The forensic team had completed a second sweep of the bunker's evidence and found a small, rusted tin box wedged behind the control room's brick wall. The box was light, unremarkable on the outside, but inside was something no one was prepared for. A 90-minute Maxell cassette tape and a piece of paper folded 8 times. Scrawled in faint pencil were 2 capitalized words: Emily Keep. Emily wasn't in any reports. She wasn't on missing persons lists, not in Clay's logs, nor in administrative records. But when the tape was digitized and played, the interrogation room fell silent as a tomb. A female voice, about 20, shudder, 25 years old, slightly trembling, with a Midwestern accent. The 19-minute recording was a whirlwind that shattered the investigation's assumptions. I don't know where I am. They said this was a place to heal, but no one gets to choose. I was brought here after joining a program for former students. They asked about my habits, my dreams, then said I needed rest. Then, they turned off the lights. There are others here. I hear them, but we're not allowed to talk. They gave me pills. I didn't take them. I hid them in the mattress. I counted 9. I saw him. The old man with a scar behind his left ear. He carries a notebook. Logs every behavior. He looks at me like I'm an experiment. I don't know how long I'll be here, but if someone finds this tape, please, find my sister. Her name is Lily. Lily Monroe. She won't stop until she knows where I am. The final part made Tisdale leap to her feet. Lily Monroe, the woman who vanished with Ethan Carter in 2003, had told police in a preliminary interview she was an only child. No one mentioned a sister named Emily. No hospital, school, or contact record showed a familial link. But the voice on the tape, so raw it chilled the skin, told a different story. Hours later, contacting Lily's stepmother in Iowa, Tisdale got confirmation. Lily did have a half-sister, Emily Grace Fenton, who vanished in 1997 during a summer internship with an organization called AmeriCare Rural Renewal Project. Emily's case was never thoroughly investigated due to lack of evidence. With no funds for lawyers or investigators, her file was closed, as ran away. Another shock, 1997 was the year Vernon Clay's Seraphim Solutions was officially registered. Cross-referencing nonprofit records, AmeriCare had received funding from a Seraphim-affiliated company for 3 years until it dissolved in 2000 for financial opacity. Tisdale knew she wasn't chasing a single disappearance anymore. She was wading through a web, shell organizations, vanished personnel, tapes hidden in walls, and above all, coincidences too precise to be random across 2 generations of missing people. A question surfaced: did Lily know the truth about Emily? Had she found evidence, and was that why she and Ethan became targets? Back at the scene, the underground bunker, the forensic team was ordered to expand the excavation, focusing behind the wall where the tin box was found. After nearly 6 hours of continuous work, they uncovered a small, soundproof chamber built into the rock. No door, just a narrow ventilation slit. Inside was a folding cot, an old flashlight, and a wall section scratched with fingernails. "I am Emily. I am still here." But no one was there. No remains, no fabric, no signs of life. The room was a relic left mid-act, as if someone had been there, tried to signal, then was erased. In a mesh bag behind the cot's mattress, the team found a plastic wristband, the kind used in hospitals or reform facilities. Faintly printed, Fenton, E. S12, April 6, 1997. S12, like S19 in the old log, like S24, the code for Ethan Carter. Each victim wasn't a person, they were a number, a link, an experiment, and in a chilling moment, Tisdale realized Emily had fought back, recorded, hid the tape, scratched her name into stone, all to ensure someone outside wouldn't forget she existed. A message, buried for 12 years, but finally found, and in that moment, Agent Nora Tisdale knew the one they were hunting wasn't a ghost of the past. He'd never vanished, he'd only shifted, changed form, and kept watching from closer than anyone dared imagine. The next day, Tisdale called an emergency meeting at the Barstow FBI office. On the screen was a diagram linking organizations tied to Seraphim Solutions, mostly defunct nonprofits, shell companies, or short-lived investment funds. But one name was still active, operating as a community health center on the outskirts of Needles, California. Unity Renewal Center, where Vernon Clay was listed as an honorary consultant in his final year. Tisdale drove there unannounced. The building looked like any community clinic: green sign, American flag out front, white-coated staff chatting with patients in the back lot. But when she entered the reception and asked for the list of administrative staff, the receptionist's demeanor shifted. Hands stiffened, smile vanished. "You want to see the medical director?" she asked, probing. "No. I want to see Jacob Myers," Tisdale replied, eyes unflinching. She'd seen that name once, in Seraphim Solutions' 2006 financial records. A faint signature beside asset transfer, Vernon Clay to Jacob Myers. The receptionist disappeared behind a half-closed door. Minutes later, a man in his 60s appeared. Silver hair, sun-darkened skin, slow but steady steps. He wore a white shirt, no name tag, no emotion. "Have we met?" he asked, voice low like water, seeping through stone. "Not yet, but I think you know why I'm here," Tisdale replied, scanning his face for any reaction. Jacob Myers neither denied nor confirmed. He just stayed silent, then invited her into his office. A room too tidy, cold, without a single photo or personal item, everything arranged with absolute precision. Nothing extra, nothing missing. "You worked with Vernon Clay?" she asked. "I was mentored by Clay in a residential recovery program. I was one of the first trainees. Later, I took over documentation and administrative organization when he could no longer manage," he answered, as if rehearsing the response for years. "What do you know about the underground facility in the Mojave?" Myers looked straight into Tisdale's eyes. "I know it was built for a noble purpose, but like everything in human history, it was corrupted." "By whom?" "By those who thought they could save people by making them hurt." Tisdale didn't know what in his voice sent shivers down her spine. Maybe its unnatural calm, or maybe how he said people, as if he'd never been part of it. She shifted tactics. "Do you know the name Emily Grace Fenton?" A slight pause, almost imperceptible. "I've heard the name." She left a tape. She mentioned a man with a scar behind his left ear. "Is that you?" Silence. Myers stood, walked to the window, looked out. No answer. Tisdale stepped closer. "I think you never stopped watching them. Those who lived in that system. You knew who Lily Monroe was. You knew Ethan Carter. And I believe, you know exactly what happened in the summer of 2003. Myers turned back. His eyes weren't calm anymore. They darkened. Deep. "You don't understand. What Clay did was to filter out truth. We didn't hurt anyone, we just pushed them to their limits. Ethan and Lily are dead, no, Myers said, his lips curling into a strange smile. They didn't die. They transcended. You're just not ready to understand that. Tisdale activated the recorder in her pocket. I have evidence, and I'll tear this entire system apart. Jacob Myers didn't react. He simply slid open a desk drawer and placed a small metal object on the table, a silver ring engraved with EM and a single key. You're on the right path. But if you want to end this, you have to go back to where it began. Clay hid something under the floor of his sleeping quarters. He never trusted me enough to show me. But you might. Tisdale took the key. It was cold as memory. She knew the real battle hadn't yet begun, because the one they were hunting was still very close. Hours after the chilling confrontation with Jacob Myers at Unity Renewal Center, Nora Tisdale was back at the desert bunker, this time, not alone. A specialized demolition team, ground-penetrating radar, and 2 federal task force units sealed off the area, and what they found was exactly where Myers pointed, beneath the concrete floor of Vernon Clay's old sleeping quarters. The silver key engraved with EM, which Tisdale now believed, stood for Emily Monroe, not evidence marker, as some early theories suggested, unlocked a floor safe. Inside was a sealed, rot-proof plastic document box and an old cassette recorder, a dusty but functional Sony Walkman. Tisdale carefully inserted the tape into the transfer device. The audio crackled briefly, then a man's voice came through, dry, steady, unrepentant. If you're hearing this, I'm either dead or caught. Doesn't make much difference. It was Vernon Clay. I'm not recording this for forgiveness. I don't believe in redemption. I did what I believed was right, and if I was wrong, it's only by the standards of a society rotted to its core. Tisdale sat still in the dark as the tape rolled on. It wasn't a defense, it was a manifesto. I started Seraphim Solutions with a simple belief. Most people don't know who they are until everything is stripped away. I saw it in the military, in hospitals, in prisons. But the government lacked the courage to do what was needed. They offered therapy. I stripped masks. Emily Fenton was a failure, not because she was weak, but because she was too smart. She recorded. She hid papers. She wouldn't break. I ordered her termination, but Jacob hesitated. He didn't have the stomach, so I did it myself. Tisdale shuddered. She thought of the sealed room where Emily had been. The fingernail scratches, the plastic wristband. And now the Rossett confession from the architect of this entire hellish system. I loved Lily Monroe once, an inappropriate love. I saw in her resilience, hatred compressed into a drive to live. I thought I could train her. But then she found Emily's tape. I couldn't let that spread. I planned to move Lily to the second facility, deeper, where no one ever returns. But Ethan Carter, he ruined it. He charged in that night, pulling Lily to run. He thought he was a hero, but he just dragged them both into the pit. I ordered the response team. No captures, no witnesses. Tisdale's blood froze. I kept Ethan's ring as a reminder that emotions destroy structure. I don't regret it. Everyone I chose was already broken. I just pushed them to their true selves. None of them were innocent. The tape ended with a short, cold laugh, sharper than steel. If someone's still hunting me after I'm gone, fine. Find Jacob. He's the only one left who knows the truth. But he's weak. He'll talk. And when he does, the end will come faster than I thought. Tisdale stopped the machine. The room fell silent, but in her mind, 1,000 questions erupted at once. Hours later, Jacob Myers was summoned to the federal office in Barstow. Before him were the recording, the 1997 financial records, and a list of missing persons partially matched by DNA to relics in the bunker. Tisdale asked one question: will you confess, or let the court force it? Myers stared at a photo of Lily Monroe from 2002, laughing with Ethan at a small birthday party in Barstow. In that moment, his resistance crumbled. I didn't choose that path, he said, voice hoarse. But I held the door, and I knew who went in. Never came out. The confession, recorded over 6 hours, detailed every minute, every room, every file, where bodies were hidden, where evidence was destroyed, where breaking points of captives were logged. But throughout, Myers never once said he regretted it. I only regret not leaving sooner, he said at the end. But regret isn't remorse. As the number 9 handcuffs locked around his wrists, Myers whispered to Tisdale, "You're the first to break the system without touching violence. Clay would hate you for that." Then he went silent. Not another word, in jail, in court, or when the life sentence was read. The confessions of Vernon Clay and Jacob Myers, though recorded, were unrepentant. But truth doesn't need remorse to take shape. And for the first time in over a decade, Tisdale knew light had pierced where darkness once reigned. But light, as she soon realized, doesn't erase shadows completely. What was exposed was only the surface. The depths held the nameless pain of those left behind. 2 weeks after Jacob Myers' confession, the FBI released its federal investigation report on Seraphim Solutions and its network of recovery centers that operated as a disguised human trapping grid in the Mojave. Details confirmed over 20 missing victims, mostly residents from 1996 to 2007, identified through DNA, personal items, and internal logs found in Clay's floor safe. But among all those names, one lingered in Tisdale's mind: Lily Monroe. Those who knew her from a 2001 shelter, from a local church, described a girl, both heavy and fragile at once. A social worker said, "Lily always seemed to look through you, like she saw something you couldn't." No one knew what truly happened between Lily and Ethan Carter. On that night they tried to escape, but now, it was clear, they didn't get far. They didn't have a chance. 2 sets of remains were found 6 miles from the main facility, shallowly buried in a dry canyon. In the female skeleton's hand was a necklace fragment engraved with EC. Tisdale recognized it instantly. Ethan Carter had given it to Lily in that 2002 birthday photo. They died together, perhaps less than 20 minutes' walk from the camp's gate. Tisdale sent a private letter to Ethan's mother in Modesto. "Too frail to travel," she replied with a handwritten card. "Thank you for not letting my son be just a missing name." As for Emily Grace Fenton, her only living relative was an older sister in Wisconsin. Upon hearing the news, she said only, "I dreamed of her for years, now I can let her rest." The stories of those left behind weren't recorded, weren't quoted. But Tisdale knew they were the living proof that truth, even arriving late, was worth more than eternal silence. In the summer of 2024, the Seraphim bunker was permanently sealed. The facility was filled with reinforced concrete, a symbolic act to ensure no one could return. On the barren ground that hid decades of pain and crime, a stone plaque was erected. No list of victims' names, no dates. Just one carved line: "We didn't vanish, we were just forgotten too long." Nora Tisdale attended the first memorial. No cameras, no press. Just a small group, survivors, families of the lost, and those somehow touched by this story. Maria Velasquez, the landowner who found the first body trapped in the cactus, was invited to speak. Choking up, she said, "I thought I just stumbled on a corpse, but I ended up opening a gate. No one wants to be the first to see raw truth. But if I didn't look, who would? That question, if I don't look, who will?" became the unspoken motto of the Special Task Force Tisdale, founded later that year, the Desert Cold Unit. A team dedicated to tracing forgotten missing persons cases in the Southwest U.S. cases, with decayed files. Closed for insufficient evidence. She knew she couldn't save everyone. But after Mojave, she no longer allowed herself to turn away. Those left behind, like Lily Monroe, Maria Velasquez, Ethan's mother, lived with a pain called no answers. Now, they had a piece of the answer. Not enough to erase loss, but enough to begin healing. And for Tisdale, that was reason enough to keep going. In late fall 2024, Nora Tisdale returned to where it all began. The northern edge of the Mojave, the empty stretch where Lily and Ethan's camper was found in the desert, hollow, silent, and seemingly forgotten. This time, she didn't come to investigate, but to listen. She brought a pocket recorder, a small notebook, and her familiar black pen. There, the wind still lashed like a searing blade. The rocks remained red as dried blood. The cacti still stretched upward like the silent arms of memory. But in the air, something had shifted, no longer a shroud of fear but a sense of opening. Tisdale sat on a flat rock, exactly where witnesses reported seeing a man screaming, hands bloodied, nearly 15 years ago. No one knew who he was. No DNA, no record, just a fleeting shadow in the desert. But Tisdale kept thinking of that detail, that in a machine-orchestrated nightmare, someone had wept. Not for being hurt, but for hurting others. Like Bobby Hayes in the Tommy Morrison case, once a friend, once the face of condolences, but truth still rose from the sand, despite every effort to bury it. Tisdale opened her notebook and wrote, "Not every crime lies underground, some live in words. In how people remember, or try to forget." In December, the Mojave case's final report was presented to the Federal Investigation Committee. It spanned 386 pages, listing 24 verified victims, 9 implicated suspects, 3 reintegration centers directly tied to Vernon Clay's network, and a web of financial shell companies stretching from Nevada to Arizona. But what chilled people wasn't the numbers, it was the repetition. The scams, the inpatient transfer methods, the voluntary therapy contracts victims were forced to sign before entering the facilities, all eerily similar. A professionalism so precise, it was almost bureaucratic. "We're not facing a group of deviants," Tisdale said at the hearing. "We're facing a system designed to rationalize violence, abstract responsibility, and turn human pain into internal processing statistics." She didn't read the report like a lawyer. She told the story, in her own voice, of Lily Monroe, of Emily Fenton, of Ethan Carter. She spoke of the iron box underground, the cassette tape. How Vernon Clay's voice never wavered when he said, "I don't regret it." And finally, she placed a copy of the tape on the committee's table saying, "If you can't sleep after hearing this, at least you still have a conscience. If you sleep soundly, we'll know who to investigate next." The room was silent for 45 seconds afterward. Then the first to stand, the committee chair said, "You didn't come here for justice. You came to remind us we'd lost it." In January 2025, Lily and Ethan's restored camper was displayed at the Museum of Modern Crime in Santa Fe, a symbol of what wasn't buried. Beside it was a miniature model of the underground room where Emily Fenton was held, complete with the scratched wall, torn notebook, and nameless plastic wristband. Every visitor received a small paper, "Write the name of someone you stayed silent for when they needed you to speak." A collection box sat at the room's end, unlocked. Anyone could drop a note, or not. But each week, Tisdale collected the papers, reading each line. Some wrote, "My brother." Some wrote just, "Me." And Tisdale realized the legacy of Lily, Emily, and all those forgotten wasn't their tragedy. It was the quiet transformation they left in others. A wake-up call. In March 2025, a year after the first body was found in the cactus, a special podcast series, Desert Doesn't Bury Everything, launched, hosted by Tisdale. Each episode was a chapter of the Mojave investigation. But what made it a national phenomenon wasn't just the content. It was how it challenged listeners. Are you sure you'd speak up if a loved one was taken to a support center? Would you question what you once thought was legal? Do you think someone's absence is their choice, or our failure? In the final episode, Tisdale didn't talk about what she knew. She spoke of what she didn't. Of those still unfound, names unidentified, missing person calls police hadn't opened for lack of clear evidence. She said, "I don't know who among us listening will be the one to touch a new truth. A gas station builder, a clerk checking old files, a kid wandering into an old cave. But when that moment comes, I hope you remember this, you're not alone. Someone will believe you. Someone won't turn away." The podcast's final words and the entire investigation were a whisper. Truth doesn't need acceptance. It just needs not to be buried. One early spring morning, Tisdale received an unmarked package. Inside was a journal. Its opening line, in faded ink, "If I don't survive, tell this story for me." Signed. EGF Emily Grace Fenton had left something behind before she was killed, or vanished forever. And what did that mean? The story wasn't over. Only the brave would turn the next page. In a modern society like the United States, where technology, law, and welfare systems seem to reach every corner of life, the story of Lily Monroe and Ethan Carter's disappearance and what was buried under the Mojave for nearly 2 decades reminds us that some people are still easily forgotten, and some truths remain untold. The story isn't just a thrilling case but a mirror reflecting real societal gaps. Sham rehabilitation centers, the abuse of power under the guise of mental health support, and how victims like Emily Grace Fenton were imprisoned, broken, and erased without anyone noticing. Meanwhile, mastermind Vernon Clay operated his system like a legitimate business, enabled by society's indifference to those no one asks about. The story also shows how betrayal can come from those closest, like Jacob Myers, who saw himself as a benefactor, but led his former girlfriend to her death. Yet what makes this story truly hopeful is the actions of ordinary people who refused to stand by. Maria Velasquez, who called police. After finding a body, investigator Nora Tisdale, relentless in chasing the smallest details, and the victims' families, who even after years held fast to their hunger for truth. The greatest lesson is this: justice doesn't come on its own. It requires those who dare to dig deep, confront reality, and believe that what's buried, literally and figuratively, deserves to be brought to light. If you believe truth should never be buried, and every victim deserves to be heard, hit subscribe to join us in the pursuit of justice. Thank you for being here. See you in the next video, where we'll tell another story the world forgot.